He was 17 at the time, and he asked me, Dad, what am I going to do now? And I said, well, I am not going to give you any of the business. He said, I've got $25,000 saved. If you want to put $25,000 in, you can buy 25% of the business up front. It's not always easy working with family, but we've built a really good working relationship where he runs the operations of the business. Right now, we have 42 people, and we're doing 6.2 million.
Welcome to the Franchise Champion Show. I'm your host, Alan Regala, CEO and founder of Athlete to Owner Franchise Coaching. I was a D1 athlete and used the principles of high performance training to build and sell a multi-million-dollar franchise business. And now I want to help others do the same. So let's go. Our next guest has built not one, but multiple multi-million-dollar franchise businesses over the past 2 decades. But what really caught my attention is his decision to bring his son into the business at just 17 years old, and how they've grown together to build a $6.2 million operation. I'd like to welcome to the Franchise Champion Show, Joe Steffens with Renew Medic. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Alan.
Great. Well, start us off and tell us, how did you first get into franchising?
So I first got into franchising probably close to 20 years ago, and I was in corporate America, and I was kind of tired of climbing the corporate ladder, and a friend of mine reached out to me and just said, hey, I have an opportunity for you to buy into a Service Master franchise. And so I looked into it, talked to my wife, tried to calm her down a little bit. I told her I was going to walk away from a nice paying marketing job. And we went ahead and pursued it and bought my first franchise back in, I think it was somewhere around 2002. And so have been doing that since.
Wow. So you just decided you were done with your corporate life and you had to convince your wife that you wanted to do something different and leave your job to start a business.
Right. And I had always had more of an entrepreneurial feel, and that I wanted to do something that I could run myself. And so that was something that interested me, and it was very scary, but ended up working out pretty well.
Wow. So what exactly was it about your corporate job that you didn't like?
I think just the feeling that you were constantly having to climb the corporate ladder and get to the next level and, try to impress the next boss to be the person that got the next promotion. And it wasn't me. It wasn't something that I really wanted to do, to climb over other people to get to where I wanted to be and achieve. And I felt like I'd like to do that for my own business and then reap the rewards of that, directly.
Yeah. I think it's super common. It feels like, people just, at least like with me, I felt very similar. I didn't feel like didn't feel like I was valued as much as I should have been, or just, I don't know. I felt like if I'm going to work really hard at this and put a lot of my time and energy into this, it feels like I should be, putting this into something that I own. And the politicking is definitely something I wasn't a big fan of, trying to kind of move up the ladder. Yeah. So I think a lot of people can definitely relate to that.
Sure.
Okay, so you ended up having a friend just get you into a Service Master business. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, and my initial business was a commercial cleaning franchise for a Service Master.
Okay. And tell us how that went.
So it was interesting. It was my very first entry into my own business, and I actually had something bad happen where I was contracted to clean some windows on a post-construction cleaning job, and I hired a subcontractor, and the subcontractor ended up scratching all the exterior windows of 2 buildings, a 2-story and a 3-story building. And I thought I had coverage for it, and I thought that the sub had proper insurance, and he did not. And so it was one of those situations where, pretty quickly you felt like, wow, did I make the right decision? And so So I actually, started through that insurance claim. The insurance company initially denied the claim. When it was first starting out, it was probably about a $300,000 claim, and
Holy cow.
and so just kind of let that go on. It ended up working its way out, and it did get covered eventually, but it was enough to scare me out of business pretty
Yeah, no
quickly.
kidding.
And so ended up going to work for another franchise and worked for him for a couple years in the Chicago market. And then at the end of that 2 years, throughout the period of time I was with him, I was thinking, why did I sell the thing? Why did I jump out of it so quickly with just one bad thing that happened?
Okay, so you sold the cleaning business before you went and worked for another.
Yes, I actually sold it to another Service Master franchise, a franchisee, and he hired me on as his director of marketing. And so I worked for him, helping him grow his business for a couple years. And we grew his business quite a bit. And then I started thinking maybe I got out of this too quickly, and then started to look into another franchise, similar franchise with Service Master out in the Denver area. And so I moved my family to Denver, opened up another franchise, commercial cleaning Service Master franchise in the Denver area. And from there, it just kept growing, and eventually added on another line of services for Service Master, which was fire and water restoration. And so got the business to the point where we were doing about $2 million a year in commercial cleaning work and $2 million a year in disaster restoration work.
Wow. Wow, that's phenomenal. That's fantastic. So you had a brief stint where you got some experience and some exposure to the cleaning side of the business, and then you worked for another franchisee, maybe, and maybe you learned, do you feel like you learned some operational things from that experience that helped you into the next foray into ownership?
Oh, definitely. I learned a lot about the whole marketing piece, and how to protect yourself as a business owner, making sure that you had proper, insurance certificates and things like that from anyone that you subcontract. And just making sure that you have proper coverage on, as you get into operations. And just learned how to grow a business and how to go from a smaller 1 or 2 person operation to having 30, 40 employees. A lot of that I learned by working for this other franchise that had been around a while, and just kind of absorbed me into the business, and then I helped him grow his business from there. So certainly a learning experience.
That's great. That's great. Wow. And I mean, that was a big business, 2 million in cleaning and 2 million in the disaster restoration. That's fantastic. And what period of time did it take you to get to that point?
So that was from about 2006 to about 2010 is when, so in about a 4 year period, that's how long it took to grow that. And when I moved into the disaster restoration side, I actually absorbed another franchise that was doing about $1 million a year in revenue, and purchased his business, and then took that to 2 million. So 2 million in
Wow.
the commercial cleaning, and then got it up to about 2 million in disaster restoration.
It seems really fast to go from zero to 4 million. I mean, yeah, it sounds like you acquired some business there, like a million of it, but that still seems really fast. Great job.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wish I could say it was all me, but it was, part of it was just trusting that God was going to help me with it, and then part of it was hard work and hiring the right people. So, yeah, a lot involved in that.
That's great. Okay, so that was, see, 2010. What happens after that?
So, around that time, 2010, between 2010, probably 2012, I started just realizing that, this was both of those businesses, janitorial services and commercial cleaning, and the disaster restoration services, those are pretty much a 24/7, business. And so you're cleaning buildings all during the week and all into the night. And disaster restoration is basically 24/7. Whenever a disaster happens, you have to be available. So over a couple year period, I started to kind of get burnt out with just the number of employees I had. And I really considered just getting completely out of the business. And
Hmm.
so I started talking with some other franchises, and then I was actually contacted by two different people from the franchisor that was interested in leaving the franchisor group and purchasing my commercial cleaning business. At the same time, I had another large service master that approached me about purchasing my Denver location and rolling me in to be part owner of their conglomerate, which was basically a $60 million business. And so on the same day, I sold my commercial cleaning business off to someone that left corporate service master and bought my commercial cleaning side. And on that same day, I actually went into a partnership with, I believe it was 19 other owners of the largest service master in the country at the time, and they were doing about $60 million. So I went from being one owner to one of 20 owners.
Wow. Wow. What a day that was.
Yeah, and and it did kind of solve the problem of not feeling like everything was on my shoulders as one person, and it was kind of dispersed out, and you're a part of a larger organization.
If you're wondering if franchise ownership is right for you, I'd love to help. As a franchise coach, I work one-on-one with my clients to 1. Find the perfect business match for their goals, skills, and investment level, and 2. Help them prepare to be champions in their business. Here's the best part: my coaching services are completely free. To schedule a 15-minute introduction call, visit athletetooowner.com. The link is in the show notes. Now, back to our show. So tell me more about that. Like, how does that work? So you're one of, what you said, like 20 owners. Like, who's actually now doing the day-to-day stuff, or whatever you were doing before? Like, who's doing that?
Yeah, so the way that that was set up was they had multiple locations all over the country. And when they brought me on as an owner, I basically stayed in the Denver market and ran the branch in Denver. And so I was one of the owners and running the local branch. And so I did that for about a year and a half to 2 years. And I think during that period of time, I learned that one of the things that I loved about franchising and about being a franchise owner was being the person making the decisions. When you become one of 20 owners, you're not making the decisions. You don't determine when vendors are paid. You don't determine which jobs to take, which jobs not to take. It really becomes more of a corporate setting again when you're one of 20 owners in a much bigger organization. And thankfully, I had a really good attorney that drew up my contract when I joined this other group, and at any time I was able to leave, or they could let me go at any time, and there was an agreed to a process of valuation for me to leave. And so I executed that option, and decided to go ahead and leave after about a year and a half. And that's when I started thinking, what am I going to do now? I knew I wanted to
Yeah.
go back into franchising or to own another business, maybe a smaller business. And that's when I looked into Furniture Medic.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you decided to exit that conglomerate because you couldn't, you didn't like having to be in kind of a semi-corporate environment again. And so, how did you find Furniture Medic? What made you decide to go that direction?
So at the time, Furniture Medic was owned by Service Master Corporate. And so it was kind of a natural, I guess, progression to kind of look into that and see if that was another option. What I did at that time is with the experience of owning the commercial cleaning side of the business and then disaster restoration, and now thinking about about the Furniture Medic side of things, I did a quick calculation. I wanted to find out if I were to do $1 million in revenue in the commercial cleaning side of the business, I knew that I'd need about 40 people to do $1 million in revenue in employees. And if everything went right, I could maybe make about 5% net on that, on $1 million. And then I looked at the
Wow.
disaster restoration side of the business and I did the math on that. And to do $1 million a year in revenue, I would need probably somewhere around 20 people. Let's say 20 people, 15 to 20 people. And if everything went right, I could make 10 to 15% net. When I looked into the furniture medic side, they were, claiming that, and from other franchise owners I'd spoken to, that to do $1 million in revenue, you'd need maybe 8 to 10 people, and you could make 20 to 25% net. And so just kind of going through that and doing the math, I thought this may be a good option.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. You have a quarter of the people and to make five times the money.
Hmm.
It seems like
A no
a pretty
brainer.
good option. Oh my gosh. So for those who don't know, what is Furniture Medic?
So Furniture Medic, it started out over 50 years ago, but basically it was doing furniture restoration for both individual homeowners and then also for insurance claims. And there was an arm of it also that did on-site touch-up work in homes and in commercial properties. So you have an elevator, wooden elevator panels, wooden panels throughout an office setting, furniture in an office, those sorts of things could be restored, repaired, restored. And it was very technically driven. You really need someone that has an eye for detail. You really need someone that understands how color works and different colors and how to achieve a certain result. And so it was more of like an art project type. Someone that was very gifted with art would do well as the actual person doing the work. I never looked
Mm,
at it from, I was never artsy. I was never the type of person that's going to be building furniture really or finishing furniture, but I saw the opportunity from a business side of things. And I figured I'll hire the people that actually know how to do the work itself. And so that intrigued me more about the potential growth of the business. And at the time, they were also starting to do some cabinet restoration as well. And so we're same type of scenario. A kitchen would have a fire or water damage loss in a home, and started a process where you could go in and repair cabinets, remove cabinets, repair them, and put them back in.
okay, and thus Renew Medic was born? Is that how
Yes.
this works?
So I started with Furniture Medic about 9 years ago, and at the time we started out focusing on furniture initially. My son and I started in the garage, in a three-car garage after I sold my other business, and we just started restoring furniture. And my son would be out in the middle of summer trying to strip and refinish a customer's cherry bedroom set, and I, not talented in that way. I would go out and look at it after he did it. I look at it and say, it doesn't look right. I don't know how to fix it, but it doesn't look right. And so we about killed each other in the first few months, but we really started to go after the cabinet side of the business. And with the fire and water mitigation background, it was a natural to pursue the cabinetry side of things. And that's what we started to do.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so yeah, it sounds like you were able to utilize your previous experience in that restoration in the restoration world, but now focusing a bit more on the cabinet side of things. Like how did that end up, I guess, converting or, turning into what it is today?
Yeah, I'll back up just a little bit too. I wanted to just mention as I brought my son into the business, he was working for me at Service Master when I had that business. He was 17 at the time, and he asked me, "Dad, what am I going to do now?" And I said, "Well, I am not going to give you any of the business. You can either work for me, or you could be part owner of a new business that we start together. And so we went out and looked at the furniture medic business, and they kind of talked to us about it, corporate, and we came back from that trip to Memphis, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, if you want to go in on this with me, you're going to need to put money into it. So at age 17, how much money do you have saved?" And he had mowed lawns, he had shoveled snow, and worked for me at Service Master, and he didn't really want to tell me how much money he had in the bank. And I said, "Come on, how much money do you have in the bank?" And he said, "I've got $25,000 saved." And
Wow.
yeah, I said the same
Good for
thing.
him.
Yeah. And so I said, "Okay, here's the deal. We're starting off brand new business. If you want to put 25,000 in, you can buy 25% of the business up front." And I said, "If you want to wait, or if you want to put 5,000 in, you're gonna get 5% of the business, and you can wait and do it later, but then the value could be different. And so you could put 25,000 in next year, and if we've grown the business, you may only get 5% of the business at that point. So now's your time. What do you want to do?" He thought about it, and he said, "I want to do it, Dad." So he put all of his money into it, drained his bank account, and he today owns 25% of the business.
That is incredible. That is so cool. Good for him for being able to save that much money. I mean, that is a ridiculous amount of money to accumulate when you're 17 years old. And if you're just, especially if you're just mowing lawns and, working for dad, like that's amazing. Like, good lesson for those out there now to save up and not spend it on $6 Starbucks drinks and all the other fun stuff that there is to spend money on right now when you're young. Holy cow. Wow. So that's great. What a fantastic story to have, your son be able to be a part of this business in such a big way too, and actually contribute, not just be given, hey, here's some of the company I'm just going to give you, but actually he's put his own money in. That's amazing.
And that's part of the success of it, is that, to be able to trust someone like your own son, that has a vested interest, and we're on the same page. And it's not always easy working with family, but we've built a really good working relationship where he runs the operations of the business. He's 26 now. He completely runs the operation in the field, in the shop, and then I run the administrative side in the office. So he's really grown into the position, and does very well, has a respect of all the people that he leads.
That's great. Very cool. Yeah, what a great learning experience. And I bet that having him put his own money in really probably changed, the way that he thinks about the business, versus just being given it to him,
Right,
or if he was just an employee working for you.
right, right.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, so back to this conversion. How did this, how did this happen? Going from, you're doing all this work in the furniture side of things, and then it seemed like you started realizing, hey, there's a lot more work on the cabinet side of things. How does that progress?
Yeah, so we had known coming out of the disaster restoration side that there was an opportunity. I didn't know what the opportunity was, because prior to the cabinet side of things, it was pretty standard in the industry to go in when there's water damage in a kitchen, drill holes in the bottom of the toe kick, and blow air in there and dry it out, and then leave it, and not really repair the actual cabinets themselves if they were damaged. As long as they were dried out, a lot of times they'd leave the cabinets in place. And so what we did is we just started to go around to mitigation companies, of which we used to be one, and just explain the process, that we could get cabinets out quickly, repair them quickly, and reinstall them quickly, and do it professionally. And so that was the pitch to the mitigation companies. And so slowly, as we got into working with more and more mitigation companies, we would just grow that business. And they, whenever they'd be involved in a water loss or a fire loss that would involve cabinetry, we started, to position ourselves as the cabinet experts. And it just grew and grew. And then as the adjusters with the insurance companies saw what we were doing, they, it saves them a lot of time and money too to be able to repair the cabinets rather than demo the cabinets and break the countertops and such. And so that's a big part of it is that, typically, a lot of cabinets are they have on top of them sit quartz and granite countertops, and those are very expensive. And so if you try to remove those, most mitigation companies would tell you they break the countertops somewhere between 50 and 75% of the time. We have about a 98%, 99% success rate of not breaking the countertops when we remove the cabinets, repair them, and put them back in. And so that was a big selling factor to the insurance carriers and to the mitigation companies from the liability standpoint of them breaking a granite countertop. They may be on the hook for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does that difference in cost look like for repairing a set of cabinets, just the ones that have been damaged, versus if they were to have to like replace everything?
So that varies based on the quality of the cabinets and the countertops. So we, have done some analysis over the years, and I'd say in general we can save usually between 50 and 70% to the insurance company. There are
Wow.
instances where so many of the cabinets are damaged that it makes sense to replace them. And so that's
Hmm.
part of what we try to guide and direct the insurance carrier in is sometimes it makes sense to replace. It's going to be more cost effective to replace, but it depends on the amount of damage to the cabinets, the quality of the cabinets, and how many cabinets you're actually removing and have damage.
Yeah. Yeah. That is pretty crazy to be able to save 50 to 75% for an insurance company. I would think that every insurance company would want to work with you guys.
Yeah, it's a little difficult sometimes because they don't understand. Sometimes if you don't have an adjuster that understands the total cost of the claim, they may not see it that way, and so they may look at it and look at the cost of one cabinet. Well, I can buy that cabinet at Home Depot for $350 and you're charging me double that. Why? And you have to explain to them that part of part of the cost involved. And when I talk about cost savings, I'm talking about the total claim. And so time is money with the insurance companies. And so the longer you have the cabinets out of the home and the longer the homeowner it doesn't have a functioning kitchen, there's additional expenses. They actually call them ALE, additional living expenses, that many times a policy requires that the insurance company pays for hotel and meals if the kitchen is not functioning. So if the cabinets and countertops were demoed or broken and had to be completely removed and they didn't have a functioning kitchen, then many times the policy will read that the insurance carrier has to pay those additional costs. So I'm factoring in the additional cost, not just the cost of the cabinetry, but potential replacement of countertops, ALE, all the various things that come into play.
Got it. Got it. And so, oh, those that do get it, I assume for the adjusters and the insurance companies, I imagine do love you guys. I'm having to spend a lot less money, I would assume. Does that make it easier for you guys to get work?
Again, I would say sometimes yes, sometimes no. There's so many variables with adjusters and all adjusters and insurance carriers. And so some of the adjusters have different experiences and they may not have worked with us and they may not be looking at the total claim cost and only looking at the cost of the cabinets, where that we know that that's not the right way to look at it because if you take a kitchen out of a home, then all these additional living expenses are involved, you know,
Right.
matching original cabinetry. There's a lot of skill that goes into it. And so
I bet.
we have a really good reputation, and the 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 homeowner, the insured, is typically very happy with what we're doing because we do it quickly, we do it professionally, and many times we hear that of all the contractors that are involved in their loss in their home, that we're the most responsive and do the best quality work. And we're not perfect. We stand behind everything we do, and we'll fix it if we mess up. And just having that mentality of doing the right thing in the business is, I think, one of the things that's made us successful, and the speed at which we do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, yeah, clearly doing great work and making sure the end client who's receiving these cabinets is super important. I assume that if there are enough cabinets damaged, or if the customer or the homeowner just simply wants, an updated kitchen, you guys can just build all new cabinets and just do a whole new kitchen, I assume.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility, and we offer just a small line of new cabinets that we don't build internally. We can build any cabinetry, but there's so much cabinetry that you can buy from that's already pre-made and
Hmm.
built on, basically an assembly line, and so the cost at which they can do that is is much cheaper than it would cost us to go through and make a brand new kitchen for someone. So we offer a line of cabinets that we can provide if the customer wants to upgrade to new cabinets.
Got it. That's great. So you have a whole cabinet shop, right? In a finishing shop. Is that correct?
Yes, we started out, like I said, in the garage 9 years ago, and we moved once into a smaller 1,200 square foot shop where we did everything in that shop, and then for about the past 5 6 years we have been in more of a production facility, and we started with 7,800 square feet. We added the 7,800 square foot unit to the left of us, and now we've added the 7,800 square foot unit to the right of us. And so we're up to about 24,000, just under 24,000 square feet of office and shop. Most of that is
Wow.
shop. And we have a complete cabinet building shop with proper dust collection, and we have a finishing shop, and we call it our service center. So our service center, basically covers everything in the front range of Denver, of Colorado. We go all the way from Pueblo to Fort Collins along the front range, and we can service that entire area out of this 24,000 square foot service center.
Wow. That's fun to hear the growth, starting from the garage to a small space to a giant 24,000 square foot space.
Well, and if you look at the math that I really originally did before I started this whole thing, right now we have 42 people and we're doing 6.2 million. So at one point I had up to 100 employees when I had the commercial cleaning and disaster restoration businesses combined. We were doing 4 million and we had 100 employees. So, and our net profit was probably combined was hovering around 10% net. And in this business, we're hovering closer to the 20% on 6.2 million, and we only have 42 employees.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
It is,
That is
yes.
fantastic. Wow. Good job with the math early on. That
Sometimes
was
that
wise
math
decision.
works out and sometimes it doesn't work out.
Oh, wow. If you're finding today's conversation valuable, I'd like to offer you my free guide, the Franchise Fit Playbook, a champion's guide to choosing the right business. This comprehensive resource walks you through the exact process I use with my coaching clients to identify their perfect franchise match. Download it for free at athletetoowner.com/playbook. You'll find the link in the show notes. Now, let's get back to our show. So, it sounds like you're doing great on the numbers, a much smaller team. Tell me a little bit more about the team. Like what you mentioned you're kind of an administrative back end stuff. Your son is kind of leading the operations side of things. Do you guys have like people in place so that you can go off and go on a nice vacation and have that flexibility?
Yeah, great question. We have raised up managers in the business where we can both take time off. It usually helps because we are father son. We don't take time off together, and typically I'm hoping at some point we will be able to do that, but typically if I'm gone, Daniel, my son, is running things, and vice versa. So but we do have middle managers in the business. We have a service center production manager, we have an office administrator, and then we have a field production manager. So you know on a daily basis we don't have to be here. I my mentality on franchising is stay involved, and I've seen too many over the years that want to just get it up and running and then walk away from it and expect it to just run on its own. And I've
Hmm.
seen more franchises and businesses fail because of that than if you're going to be an owner and have stay involved. I haven't seen a lot of them that an owner leaves and wants to go play all the time, that the businesses thrive and grow.
Yeah. Yeah. That the attention that an owner can spend on a business is hard to replace. That is for sure. So it sounds like things are going great. What's the biggest challenge you face these days?
I think the biggest challenge, and the one that we're currently experiencing and working through, is just as you scale, you know, you get to a point where you kind of max out on your capabilities where you currently are. And so we've had to just try to kind of retool and think of some of our processes, and we've gotten to this point. How do we get to the next step? How do we currently produce between 550 to $600,000 a month out of this facility. How do we get that to 800 to a million a month out of this facility? And it's possible. And so you have to kind of just continually look at your processes and your people and make sure that you have the right processes in place and you have the right people in place. And so it's just an ongoing thing. And in this business, it's very specialty work. It's not just hiring someone off the street and expecting them to know how to color match, you know, a 40-year-old cabinet door that was destroyed in a water loss to the rest of the kitchen. To pull cabinets out and support countertops in place without breaking those countertops and then reinstall them underneath a supported countertop, that's not a normal thing that people have done or are doing. And so there's some time that it takes to get the proper people into place. We've gone through a lot of the learnings over the last 9 years, and the franchisor actually, saw what we've been able to do, and that's what the Renew Medic franchise kind of grew out of. Is just we I believe that we should have a Renew Medic in every major market in the country, and they could be doing over $10 million a year in revenue in every major market for sure. But it just takes time to build out a shop, to have proper safety when you're looking at dust collection in a shop, and when you're setting up a spray booth. We learned there's certain regulations in every part of the country to put a spray booth in a commercial building,
Yeah.
and to set up dust collection in a commercial building. There's potential hazards with those things, and so it takes time to get your shop set up. But we're at that point now. It's just a matter of now. How do we produce 800 $1 million a revenue each month out of this facility? Is there a faster way, a more cost effective way to custom rebuild these cabinets, our finishing processes, our installation? So it's just constantly retooling and figuring out better ways to do things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really It's really interesting. I mean, a lot of people get into franchising because hey, these, processes and they got systems and I just, I go and follow the process. I go follow the systems and I think in general that I mean obviously what you want to start doing from day one. You're in a unique situation where you're kind of the first you're the first franchisee, right? Really, of this new system. I mean, you got into one system, which then became kind of this new system for Renew Medic, and you're constantly, as you've been growing, having to refigure new systems and processes. And I think that's really similar for people as they grow and they scale in any business, is having to create these systems and processes that allow for the growth, the scaling of that particular business. Because the franchisor in general is they're focused more on one unit, not like one unit of a certain size, I guess. But as you continue to grow and build and make this thing as large as you're making it, you really have to be figuring out this stuff yourself.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I've always had the mentality over the years, owning franchises for over 20 years, that I never want to count on the franchisor to feed my family. And so I want to consider everything that the franchisor does for me is gravy on the top. And if I'm going to feed my family, then I need to take the initiative and figure out the processes on my own, figure out how to better those processes, work with the franchisor, but I'm not going to wait for them to do that for me. And I think that's part of what's made us successful is that we're not depending on them to feed our families. We need to do that ourselves. The my one big plug for a franchise is that just the camaraderie and the ability to share experiences with other franchise owners that are in the same business is invaluable. I mean, we used to go and do our annual conferences with franchisees, and the best part of the whole thing was getting together with other businesses that do exactly what you do under the same brand and share the wins and share the struggles. And I know I can get on the phone and call three or four people right now that are experiencing the same issues I am, and they can call me, and it's not a competitive thing. It's we're all part of one brand. And so
Yeah.
I that's the thing that people have asked me before, why didn't you just start this up on your own? Well, they came up with the idea of pulling cabinets and repairing them and putting them back in, and we've just kind of taken it from there. And so would I have ever known how to do that myself? Probably not. And and just, you always want to keep on demanding things of the franchisor too, because we are paying a lot in royalties. But, I'm not just sitting back and saying, okay, it's just the gravy on the top. I don't care what they do. I want to be involved in it. I want to help them get to the next level. I want to make sure that they know what my needs are. As a larger business, I have different needs than the smaller franchisees. So I need to make known to them what my needs are.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love both of those points. Having that community of other owners doing the exact same thing that you're doing. I mean, that is just so unique, something you can't find outside of franchising. And it was certainly one of my favorite parts about going to conferences and just having, regular calls with, certain members of or certain other owners on a regular basis, like we called them power teams at Shelf Junie. And yeah, and then being a part of the system, contributing, I don't, are you part of the franchise advisory council?
Yeah, because Renew Medic is somewhat newer, they haven't really gotten that up and going. I was part of the franchise council for on the Furniture Medic side previously.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that for those that don't know, it's a council of franchisees that help represent all of the franchise or all of the franchise owners in that system. And so it's a smaller, subset of the owners who can represent the owners and have regular meetings with the franchisor to talk about things like marketing and, operations and all the other things that owners need help with. And that's great that, you've been a part of that in the past, and I'm sure will be in Renew Medic once there's enough other owners out there. What would you say for someone that is interested in this concept and they're in, what might be a great market for this? What kind of person, what are some of the traits of an owner would you say are important for this role in starting a Renew Medic?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have people ask me all the time, they say, hey, I'm thinking about starting my own business and I want to get into business for myself, I always want to get to the reason why they want to start their own business. And so, I always tell people, if you're wanting to start your own business because you want to be your own boss and you want to set your own schedule and you want to be able to buy a boat and and vacation all the time, it's probably not a good idea to buy your own business, because a lot of them don't provide that. I would say someone that is driven, someone that's competitive, that has a competitive nature to, I always wanted to win with Service Master. One of my goals was to win the Franchise of the Year award. And
Mhm.
I won it twice at Service Master, and I won it.
Congrats.
We won it. My son and I won it, I think, our first full year in business at Furniture Medic. So there's a competition there that you want to be the biggest and the best. And so, having that competitive spirit, being willing to work hard and not expect that you're going to just all of a sudden be rolling in money, that you're going to have to work hard day in and day out, and someone that's customer centered. And I was trained from the very beginning. When I first got into corporate America, I worked in the grocery industry, and I was told the customer is always right. And I hated that. But if you at least, try to maintain that mentality, you're gonna succeed with customers, and doing whatever it takes to make them happy. That type of mentality, someone that understands numbers and understands that everything that you do needs to be done in a way that you can grow profitably in your business. When we were at Service Master, we had 4 corporate objectives, and these were part of the reason I joined Service Master in the first part. But the first one was to honor God in all we do, and that meant something personally to me. And you can boil that down to doing the right thing on a day in and day out basis. The second one was to excel with customers. The next one is to develop your people, and the last one is to grow profitably. And so, just I think all 4 of those things have been a key part of the success of this business. Is we have tried to honor the Lord in all that we do. We have been intent on developing our people. We're not perfect, but we're continuing to grow in that, excelling with customers. And of course, everything that you do, you got to do it profitably, or you're not going to be in business.
Well said. Well, wow, it was fantastic hearing your story. Congratulations on, having such a wonderful journey, and you're just, in the middle of things as well as you're doing now. I can tell you're gonna, you're just gonna keep on going up and up and up. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing your story, Joe, and congratulations on being a franchise champion.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate your time.
If you find value in my content, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a rating wherever you're listening or watching. Or if you have suggestions for topics or improvements, shoot me a message directly. Your support means a lot to me. Thanks for listening to the Franchise Champion Show. I'm Alan Regala, and I'll see you next week.